South Point offers all the types of entertainment you'd expect at a first-class Las Vegas resort. Did you know our 400-seat showroom is one of Las Vegas's top destinations for live entertainment? Enjoy live performances by classic Vegas entertainers, bands, and today's hottest comedians, plus a rockin' dance floor. You can also enjoy live entertainment at the Grand View Lounge, where you'll feel all the vibes of old Las Vegas. Enjoy the music, and if you love to laugh, don't miss The Dirty at 12:30, our very own free comedy show, every Friday night at 12:30 a.m. in the Grand View Lounge. The Dirty is 100% free, so arrive early. Go to southpointcasino.com or call the box office at 77136 for today's performances at the showroom and the Grand View Lounge. When you're ready for your favorite cocktail, stop in and unwind at one of our 7 specialty lounges. There's a bar around every corner, because you're in Vegas, baby. South Point Casino has plenty of attractions for the whole family. Catch a movie. Our 16-screen movie theater includes 2 XD Extreme screens for the ultimate in viewing, sound, and luxury. After the show, treat the family to a variety of treats at our old-fashioned ice cream parlor, Kate's Corner. We scoop up a variety of creamy concoctions, including smoothies, hand-dipped cones, milkshakes, malts, sodas, and sundaes. At Kate's, there's something for everyone. And if you still got time to spare, our bowling center might be right up your alley. Voted Best of Las Vegas, it's a great place for friends and family fun. 64 lanes, a pro shop, snack bar, and arcade. And while the kids are bowling, you can play slots and sip on a drink in the Alley Cat Lounge while overlooking the lanes. For our more serious and professional bowlers, the South Point is also home to a separate tournament bowling plaza.
Welcome in. Good afternoon, everyone. It is Sports by the Book. Football Frenzy. We are thrilled to be with you one last time here in 2024 on this program. I'm Jeff Parles.
I made it.
Ryan McCormick's here. I was concerned about young McCormick here because usually Ryan is up here about 30 minutes before the show. Go get my pre-show caffeine and come back up about 15 minutes before the show, and Ryan's nowhere to be found. I was concerned Ryan got stuck in the elevator back there.
Well, the thing is, we've got tonight's Monday night game to talk about, as well as 4 college football playoff games.
Yes, we do.
So we got 5 games of information.
A lot to get to today. Chris Andrews on the far side of the desk, sportsbook director here at the South Point. Chris, we'll do things a little bit differently today because this Monday night game, because of what happened yesterday, kind of lost its luster. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't mean people aren't betting it, of course.
They're betting it.
They're betting it. You guys are still at 4. There's a lot of 3.5 in the market now.
Mostly 3.5.
Right now. You guys are as low as 3 this morning.
A guy came in, took, one of my sharp guys, took 3.5 off me, 30,000.
So it's, again, so for everyone who's catching up on what happened yesterday, because of Minnesota's victory against the Packers, the Vikings and the Lions, who will play the final game of the NFL regular season now, game 272, Sunday Night Football next week. The winner of that game gets the 1 seed, regardless of what happens in this game tonight. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter if Detroit wins or loses. It's just a matter of will Detroit have 14 wins or 15 wins if they happen to win next week against Minnesota. Makes this a very hard handicap. Ryan and I will do our best. But as you said, people are still coming in firing away.
Oh, they're playing, yeah, no doubt. Plus, we got a lot of stuff. Talked about it. I think I mentioned it on Frank's show. 14 of 15 favorites win straight up.
Yep.
12 and 3 against the spread. So we got a lot of parlays running, almost all to Detroit.
See, now it makes sense why I got destroyed yesterday. I only had 1 favorite.
Really? Well, that wasn't a good move.
No, not yesterday. Well, in all honesty, not for this whole season, in all honesty. I mean, favorite.
David Purdom.
Yeah,
friend of the show. I hope we have him on that list. Anyway, Dave, I don't think he's been on our show. But he texted me today. Do you realize the NFL is on pace to have more favorites win this year than ever before? I just said, David, tell me about it. I mean, it's been that kind of year.
Yep.
No, it makes sense. I mean, it just has been, and honestly, yesterday I went through it. I went through it for the draft perspective, where this is still an epic race to the bottom. Could technically have 9 teams, not all ended 4, but 9 teams entering the week with 3 or 4 wins.
That's another thing.
Yeah.
Another record of NFL teams with 4 wins or less.
Yes, 9. If the Bears, the Jets, and the Panthers all lose this week, and they're all expected to based off the number, it would be the most in NFL history.
Yeah.
9 teams with 4 wins or less this season. Jacksonville would also have to lose as well. That might not be as certain, but 8 is still tying what would be the current record as well. Chris, I want to ask you about just the start of the quartet tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Starting in Arizona with Boise State, the 3 seed, who's really the 9 seed, taking on Penn State, the 6 seed, who's really the 4 seed. Again, the bracketing is what it is.
We'll fix that next year.
At some point. By the way, tomorrow, even before that game, tomorrow's a really good bowl card tomorrow. I mean, Alabama and Michigan gets their day going right away. Mm-hmm. Only a national semifinal rematch from a year ago now in the Requila Quest Bowl. That's the old Outback Bowl, right? I think so.
That sounds right.
Yeah. Nothing against Request Quest since I can't say it.
Quest.
But I missed the Bloomin' Onion mascot. Missed that guy a whole lot.
Yep.
Louisville, Washington at the Sun Bowl, which people always love. South Carolina,
a lot
Illinois.
of money shown on the dog there.
Yeah, South Carolina, Illinois, which that thing's been hacked at today.
What are we running? 10,
you're 10 now.
Yeah.
Most of the market just moved to 9 in the last few moments.
Okay.
Baylor and LSU, where Baylor's a 3.5 point favorite.
That was up to 4. They just took the 4 off me.
Yeah, that's a favorite flip as well. And then the game that everyone really cares about in the way of the deciding a title, Boise State 11-point underdogs in this game against Penn State with a total of 53 down in the Phoenix area. Really, Chris, you guys have been pretty static for the first 6 days you added up.
Yeah.
Moved on the 27th, which was Friday. You've been static since then, sitting at 11 here.
Yeah, pretty good two-way action. I got to tell you, the action's been great on all 4 of those games. But we don't have a lot of number movement, but the action's been terrific.
Well, it's again something we've never seen before.
No, and I think just wait till tomorrow. I mean, I talked to a friend of mine today, and they were getting off work early, and I said, my whole life, holidays have just meant extra work for me. You guys, you regular people, get a lot of fun, but I'm just here to do extra work. Anyway, glad I have a wife that understands. So.
Today earlier, by the way, because I can't help myself.
Oh yeah, that was a good game.
Was a good game, by the way. Ben Stevens tweeted this out moments ago, and in all honesty, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. By the way, Mizzou wins in the Music City Bowl. Closing is a 1-point underdog in the game, actually, here. So they covered every single number that was out there, except for some super, super early threes at some other shops. Iowa has scored 21 plus points 33 times since 2020. Okay, I butchered that completely. 33 games for Iowa, scoring 20 or more points. There we go. Since 2020, which seems high, by the way.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
That they've been to 33 games with 20 plus points. It's the first time Iowa has lost a game with scoring 20 points in that span.
They had 21 the first half, didn't they?
No, I was texting with a few of my college friends, and I was like, can you believe they managed to give up 21 points in a half to Iowa, and they're actually in the game still? Yeah. Which, again, Iowa had a special teams touchdown, which is a fair and special. But no, that's actually a shockingly good game. Did not expect that to be as good of a game. He probably killed off a lot of Monday parlays, at least, right?
We got late steam on Iowa.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was a real good game for us.
So Chris, just looking back at yesterday, I thankfully made my bet a lot smaller in going against Minnesota for the however many time. Still, eventually, you know what it's going to be like.
Close.
It's going to be, it's going to be like the Purdue bettors in college football this year. If Detroit covers on Sunday night, be like, see, I told you we were right going against them. But okay, we haven't been able to argue it for a while, but Minnesota Vikings might go 15-2.
Yeah, they're good. Yeah, that's a legit team. They got a lot of talent on that team.
Again, if they win next week in Detroit, and Chris, if you guys opened that game already, right? Even with 17 with Detroit,
3. I think we're down to 2.5. I got to tell you, Jeff, we've been really busy this morning. We got a lot of moves. Mostly because I have no idea what the hell's going on.
So that was my next question. Week 18 is almost almost a preseason week.
Yeah,
very close.
Yeah, Kansas City's a 10-point dog. What's that tell you?
Well, you telling you want me to be honest with you, Chris? If I get enough starters to play that game, I don't care if it's Joe. Like I know Jones is going to play, no Kelsey, but I know those guys. Giving me 10 points. That's pretty juicy because I think Carson Wentz can play still, honestly. The only problem is if he's behind a whole backup offensive line, forget it. They'll have no chance of blocking in that game. By the way, the Broncos, if they win, they're in.
Right.
Doesn't matter what happens behind them. If the Broncos lose, the next beneficiary would be the Miami Dolphins.
And the money has showed against them today.
So
against the Finns?
Against the Finns, yeah.
We're just going to keep betting the Jets to the bitter end, aren't we?
They've been betting them pretty much every week.
Chris, they have said more records of bad things this year than I can ever remember any singular team doing, especially when they're not even the worst team in the NFL. Yeah. Even though you can argue, by the way, 2.5 to 1 on that game. We don't know the status of Tua Tagovailoa. We don't know the status of Jalen Waddle. If Tua plays, that number zooms up for sure. If he goes, and then Saturday, if Denver and Miami both lose on Sunday. Right. If the Bengals beat the Steelers, which, Chris, I want to bring up something that a lot of people have said that I just think is flat out wrong here. If the Ravens win the opening game on Saturday, yes, Pittsburgh can't win the division.
Right.
But there is a humongous difference between the 5 and the 6 seed.
Yeah. And I'll tell you the truth, I think, and I'm going to include myself in this, we didn't realize that.
Yeah.
We just saw what's the Ravens, like 18 or something ridiculous.
The Baltimore Ravens coming 18. Up this week are 18.
Yeah, okay. So they're just not going to lose. So I was thinking, and then looking at the number, because I made my numbers like legit, and my legit number would be pick 'em.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's my legit number. So I saw the 3. I said, well, I guess now I started thinking, how can it be 3? Well, it must be meaningless for the Steelers, assuming the Ravens win. So I opened at 3. And then when, another friend of the show, Krackenberger, came and took the 3, I said, I think I'm looking at something wrong here. So I moved it down rather quickly. What am I at? 1.5 right now?
Yep.
Probably if I see any 1s showing up, I'll probably go to 1. And I got to tell you, the Steelers, they're not just going to, there's a serious dislike of this Bengal team, So, they're not going to just give it up. I can tell you that. And now that I know that the game is going to mean something regardless, I think this game should be no worse than pick. Yeah,
I'm with you. I really just don't bet games on Sunday, especially for this upcoming week where, who knows? Especially if they suffer an injury, Pittsburgh suffers an injury early in the game, they might say, you know what? We'll deal with playing Baltimore a third time if the Chargers beat the Raiders, which they should, even though the Raiders are the best team in football the last 2 weeks.
I owe some Raider people an apology because I said how bad they were and couldn't.
They're still bad.
I said just on principle you had to bet against them because they were a road favorite. And they won pretty easily.
That was a clear right side the whole way through that game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They were at 1.5 point favorites and win by 15. It really wasn't even that close. Raiders, by the way, have lost an absurd amount of draft capital the last 2 weeks. They've fallen from number 1 to number 8 in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I'm not sure how good this draft is, though.
Yeah, I tend to. You know what I think it is? I think it's a good draft if you don't need a quarterback.
Yeah.
If you need a quarterback, you're overpicking.
Yes.
As much as I like Shador, as much as some people like Cam Ward,
in the top 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Well, I think Abdul Carter.
I love the guy.
He might be the best player in the draft.
The edge rusher from Penn State, Chris is talking about, who is
he might be the best player in the draft.
By the way, so to finish the point on the Steelers, if the Steelers lose and the Chargers win, Chargers would be the 5, Steelers would be the 6. Yeah. Chris, that's the difference between being favored on the road in round 1 against Houston and being a touchdown underdog in Baltimore for the second time in 4 weeks. That's pretty significant, and it's significant for both of those teams. The Chargers, I would, even having to lay points with either of those teams in Houston, I'd probably lay it. in a playoff game with how bad Houston has looked against high-end competition
We
this
talked
year.
about that. They've really dropped. I was working on some numbers before the show Friday. I said, man, this team's really dropped off like in the last month. Oof.
Yeah.
So,
Not good.
playing well.
Not good. All right, Chris, before we let you go, just since this is our last Football Frenzy of the year, if you you can see it better on your screen at home. For me, I'm squinting hard in order to see the type on the bottom. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it a lot more clearer because the YouTube screen's a lot closer to you and a lot bigger than this screen is for me right there. But along the bottom, it's every guest that we remembered that we had this year.
I'm sure we forgot a few.
If we forgot someone, we apologize.
We had like 5 people working on it, and I'm sure we still forgot somebody.
If we forgot anyone, we apologize.
Yeah.
But everyone that's been on any show on this network this year, Sports by the Book, Punchlines, Race Day Las Vegas, Gone Racing,
the specials, the golf specials.
The golf specials. Any name that has been a guest on this show, we appreciate everyone who's been on this year. As you see, John Smoltz's name going across the bottom right now. One of the biggest
some Hall of Famers.
One of the biggest ones that we had.
Current football players.
Yeah,
Your
Daniel
pal, Bellinger. Yeah.
But we thank everyone. And Chris, again, we thank you and Vinny and Jimmy.
By the way, I have to laugh again at myself.
Please.
What did I say last week? The New York Giants are the worst team I've rated. They won going away.
Yeah.
Well, did you see the most ridiculous part of that thing?
What?
That Drew Lock, if we're going by expected points per play from a quarterback, Drew Lock had the 6th best game since 1999 by a quarterback. The only 5 games that have been better since 1999 were 2 Peyton Manning games, a Phillip Rivers game, a 2019 Lamar Jackson, obviously his MVP game. That was the game that he had the epic run against Cincinnati, and a 2007 Tom Brady game.
That's pretty good company.
That is absurd company.
We're watching the game. Naturally, we needed the Giants.
Yeah.
And it's Drew Lock's 6th year. We look at it's his 6th year in the NFL.
Yeah, it makes sense. You know how I know that, Chris?
No, I don't.
Drew Lock's senior year was the last year I lived in Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah, I remember. I've
been out here 6 years now, so it makes sense.
All right, I took enough time. You guys got a lot to talk about.
Oh, we got plenty to talk about here today.
Have a good show, and I'll see you guys in the new year. Probably.
Yes, yeah, we'll see on Wednesday. We'll see on Wednesday. Thank you very much, Chris. All right, let's go to the game tonight, Ryan. Let's start there. I'm going to be honest with you. I know everyone's coming to the window here. Earlier in the week, I really liked Detroit because I thought, all right, Green Bay, it was kind of, you coupled them together. If you like Green Bay, you like Detroit this week. I like Green Bay. I thought the Lions come out, rip up the Niners, revenge for last year's NFC title game against basically a shell of that team, obviously. Right. But now, I don't know what Campbell's going to do. My thought is that he's just going to play it straight up because that's what Dan Campbell's nature is, more so than anything. If I were coaching this game, which thankfully I'm not for a lot of reasons, this kind of feels like play your guys for a half and then get them out of there.
Okay. Which
would then kind of dictate to me that I would play Detroit first half because I think the Lions are probably going to do whatever they want in this game on offense. Right now, that first half, see, kind of everyone's with the same thinking as me, is 3 in the first half, 2.5 at the bottom in most spots.
You know what their total is in the team half? First half?
That is a great question, Ryan. We're going to have to do some extra research on that.
Because I know Kenny and Alex White this morning had said that their first half numbers, they're scoring over 8. I want to say 18 was the first half points per game. And I want to say the number when I saw it this morning was at 17. So based on their averages and kind of based on their season averages, you would take the over in the first half for the Lions. And then
13.5
based on the game
13.5 heavy juice over.
Okay, so there you go. Even more of an over.
I think I actually kind of like that. Again, I don't think especially if this game's out of hand.
Right.
This is probably like the most classic second half under game you're ever going to see because Detroit's just going to run the ball into the line the whole second half, or at least the whole fourth quarter, I should say. But again, this game is the Niners have had a season from hell. We don't have to go through that. Everyone knows it at this point. Injuries galore, underachievement galore. But the Lions, this is a meaningless game now. Just a matter of 14 or 15 wins after 17 games. If they win next week, they're NFC North champs and the number 1 seed. If they lose next week, they're the number 5 seed.
Yeah.
And the NFC playoff picture, we'll go into this later throughout the week on the shows, but the NFC playoff picture, boy, there is a humongous difference in how you handicap the NFC playoffs on if Detroit's the number 1 seed and if Minnesota's the number 1 seed. It's very rare you see that monumental of a difference between the two teams that will end up with the second and third best records in the NFL. But I really do think that is a monumental handicapping difference if Detroit versus Minnesota is the number 1 seed.
Well, I mean, we saw it last year with the playoff game, with the playoff settings when Detroit got to host a playoff game for the first time in forever. So for the Lions, a chance to get to host a playoff game, host the NFC playoff picture, or have the NFC run through your building is worth more than anything. But as for playoff positioning, this game may mean nothing, but for draft positioning, it means a whole lot. For player confidence, it means a whole lot. And for contract conversations, it also means a whole lot. So if you're Brock Purdy, you will need to go perform in this game to make sure that you get the contract that you think you deserve, and so on and so forth. But I kind of want to do the same thing that you did and put myself in Dan Campbell's shoes. So going back to his opening press conference, taking over as the Lions head coach.
Kneecaps, my friend.
His famous quote was that you're going to knock us down, and on our way back up, we're going to bite off a kneecap. You're going to knock us down again. We're going to bite off another kneecap on our way back up, to take a bite out of an ass cheek, whatever we need to do to be the last man standing, was Dan Campbell's mantra taking over the job for the Detroit Lions. It's been 4 years since he's taken over. He's embodied that day after day after day, week after week after week. He has the best spread or against the number cover percentage of any coach the last 4 years. And to go back to the sentiment of biting off a kneecap, this 49ers team ended your season last year in this building. You thought that you were going to be going to the Super Bowl, proving to your fans that this is your time, this is your window to go win a Super Bowl now. You go to San Francisco, you lose a tight one, they end your season. Now you have a chance to go through all the injuries that you've had this season. And you just got knocked down by Buffalo. And now you're having to prove whether or not you're going to be the 1 seed or you're going to be a wild card team. And you go back to the building in which your season ended last year. So this is the exact moment that is your chance to take the first kneecap off. You get this one, you go win against Minnesota next week. You're the 1 seed in the NFC. The NFC runs through you. Then you have a chance to take, or that is your second kneecap. Then you in the playoffs are biting ass cheeks and whatever else, and you're the Super Bowl champion. So, but if I'm Dan Campbell, that's what I'm selling to my team in this game. I'm proving to the rest of the world that we are the best team in the National Football League. The number may be 4. The Lions need to win this game by 25 and prove to erase last year's loss from their memory.
If you had biting ass cheeks on the show, I mentioned it all. Cash that ticket. Cash that ticket, my friends. Going out with a bang here at the end of the year, Ryan. No, but I get your point completely. That's again, like with Dan Campbell versus, let's be honest with ourselves, probably the other 31 head coaches, and well, not counting the Jets because they don't have a head coach. 30, the other 30, I guess we could go for your team too, since technically there's interims, but Thomas Brown and Jeff Ulbrich are having a race to the bottom at this point of who's less competent as an interim head coach. But how many guys would even consider what you're saying tonight of, hey, this is a meaningless game. We got to beat the hell out of the opponent. But you're right. That's always, that's why I wouldn't bet San Francisco in any fashion in this game. It's Detroit only tonight if we're doing this, which also probably then leads us to a scenario where we can find some bombers in the anytime touchdown market tonight, Ryan. If we go there, look, if you want to bet Jahmyr Gibbs to bet a first half, you could get tricky tonight. Yeah. You want to find markets with first half touchdowns? That's where I would play the stalwarts for Detroit. Better numbers on Gibbs and St. Brown and Laporta. I would do that. The guy I am 100% having something on tonight is the number 2 running back, Craig Reynolds.
Okay.
This feels like
like
Craig
it.
Reynolds is scoring tonight.
I like it.
4-1 at DK. You can do better at other shops. I think that's a very good bet tonight. You can go even further. By the way, I was reminded when we were going through this a few weeks ago that Allen Robinson is on the Lions.
Yeah.
What a blast from the past that is. Allen Robinson, by the way, Allen Robinson on the year has 2 catches for 9 yards, by the way, Ryan. Yeah. But again, you can take a shot on a bombing name here tonight on the Lions side because, maybe Jared Goff plays all 4 quarters tonight. But those skill position guys, they're going to get reps to guys who normally don't have reps tonight. So if you want to take a shot on a Jamar Jefferson at 7-1, if you want to take a shot on Brock Wright, who has scored a touchdown this year at 9-1, be my guest. Go for it. Sione Vaki, like, go ahead, go nuts. Take pizza money bets on these really long shot numbers on Detroit. I think you're a lot more live than usual with a lot of these bomber numbers on the Lions side tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you, especially with Craig Reynolds and Sione Vaki, the 2 running backs behind Jahmyr Gibbs in this game for the Lions. We'll kind of get into the prop numbers as well, but I don't expect Jahmyr Gibbs to play a full load in this one, especially with next week being on the slate and how important that of a game that is for the Lions. So I would expect more of a workload for Craig Reynolds and Sione Vaki on the Lions side. And then on the 49ers side, we did just watch them go without a touchdown against the Rams, and last week they scored, I believe, 1 against the Dolphins. So their offense is struggling. Don't necessarily know if I would be inclined to take a big shot on one of those touchdowns. Much more confident on the Lions.
So it was 2 last week. Debo finally scored. I think you might have just erased that from your memory because he's been so bad this year. And then Eric Saubert scored the other one because, of course, he did. So, look, Ryan, this feels like the bomber week for Detroit. Again, it's not been a good week it's been a good week for some, like just a guy in Buffalo I legitimately never heard of scored a touchdown for them yesterday. So let's look at these props real quick, Ryan. I
do kind of know, or I've been hearing a lot of Ricky Pearsall talk.
Joe Fortenbaugh even like that today.
Yes, I would be inclined to take that one on the Niners side, just being they're kind of in the point in their season where they're trying to get guys reps, trying to get guys confidence, and the incentives and contracts and all that kind of stuff. So for a rookie wide receiver that had to deal with some pretty serious things going into the season, I would think that they're going to try and get Ricky Pearsall a touchdown before the end of the year. So.
And remember, of course, Ricky Pearsall shot through the right side of his chest and was back in 2 months. Pretty amazing, to say the very least. All right, prop-wise, let's start with the 49ers here. Let's just get these guys out of the way here, Ryan. Guerendo, again, the running back who is now pressed into action because of all the injuries. 15.5 attempts, 63.5 rushing yards. Catch and a half for him. Kittle, 5.5 receptions. You didn't even bother with Debo tonight, which is
so I originally had Debo on there, and I was like, well, Debo last week was really his
finally
coming back to form,
like show up
and
week.
Jawan Jennings has led the Niners in targets this entire season, so that's kind of why I went.
Ryan, I have nothing on the. Again, this is all about the Lions here for me tonight. Do you have anything on the Niners side?
Just some information for our listeners. So for Isaac Guerendo, as a starter, he's 1-1 on his rushing attempts. He did go over last week, and have to think that the 49ers script is going to try and keep the Lions off the field, and be more of a game manage and get 4 or 5 yards per play. And so Isaac Guerendo should benefit from that. His 63.5 rushing yards, he is 1-1 as a starter, went over in 3 of 4 games this season that he got at least 10 carries. So has only started 2 games, but has got 10 carries in 4, has gone over in 3 of those 4. His 1.5 receptions, he's 2-0 as a starter, 3-0 3-0 this season when playing over 50% of the offensive snaps. And that is why you're getting that minus 185 for the over on that receptions for Isaac Guerendo. His total yardage, 82.5 yards, 1-1 as a starter, 2-1 when receiving over 50% of the snaps. And then going to George Kittle, 5.5 receptions over in 7 of 13 games this season, has enough targets in 9 of 13, has gone over in 2 of the last 3, and did go under in the NFC Championship game last year. So I tend to think the Lions know that George Kittle is the guy that they need to stop for this 49ers offense, whether that be running the outside zone and controlling George Kittle from setting the edge, or actually in the passing game and halting him as a pass catcher. He went under both the receptions and yardage in that NFC Championship game. And then his longest reception prop is at 23.5. He is 10-3 to the over this season. So Brock Purdy is looking for George Kittle deeper down the field, and George Kittle is obviously able to get the run after catch as well. Then looking at Jauan Jennings, as I had mentioned, he does lead the team in targets, second on the team in touchdowns, and second on the team in yards per game. His prop is set at 4.5 receptions. He is 6-7 this season, so 6 overs, 7 unders, back-to-back unders, but does have enough targets in 8 straight games. So he and Brock Purdy just haven't been on the same page. Enough targets in 8 straight, but back-to-back unders. 64.5 receiving yards. Back-to-back unders as well, under in 5 of 13 for Jauan Jennings. His longest reception is also 23.5, under in 7 of 13. Back-to-back unders, under in 4 of the last 6. So Jauan Jennings has not been the wide receiver 1 in the Niners offense the last few weeks. Deebo Samuel, again, had his first week. Last week against Miami was the first time since week 2 that Deebo Samuel had at least 10 touches in the San Francisco 49ers offense. That is not something that you would have thought going into the year. You would have thought Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey are the 3 largest pieces of the San Francisco 49ers offense. Christian McCaffrey missed the entire year. Brandon Ayuk missed the entire year. And Deebo Samuel has been forgotten for almost the entire year. But last week, finally gotten back into form. So his 4.5 receptions gone over in 4 of 14 this season, 7-7. Last week ended a 5-game under streak. So again, coming back to form. And his longest reception is at 20.5. He's gone over in 8 of the 14 this season, over in just 2 of the last 6 though. And back to the NFC Championship game, Deebo did go over 8 catches, 89 yards, so over both those receiving props for Deebo Samuel tonight. So really the only one I'm sold on is the over for Isaac Guerendo on his receptions, and then a couple plays for Deebo Samuel.
Lions, real quick here, Ryan. That is the Lions, not the lines there. Again, it kind of just goes back to what we talked about before. Will it be the conservative approach from Dan Campbell, or will it be the your great line there, Ryan? But to take Campbell's line, will it be the kneecap version of Campbell here tonight? You look at Jahmyr Gibbs, 16.5 attempts. That feels pretty high in a game we might not see a lot of him in the second half. But tread carefully. If Campbell plays this straight up, he's going to go over more likely than not. Amon-Ra St. Brown. I actually think you can get away with an under 6.5. I think you can. Even in a normal circumstance, asking him to get 7 is a lot.
Yes, it is.
So you can go under that. No problem there. But, Ryan, this is just, except for those longest reception props or longest rush prop, it is very hard to justify taking a collection of overs on the normal suspects tonight, just in case if Campbell surprises us. That's why I went with the strategy I was talking before of just take the long bombers on the anytime touchdown market, and if you hit one of them, you're having a pretty darn good night here tonight.
Yeah. So just to dive into the numbers that are on your screen, Jahmyr Gibbs over that 16.5 in 5 of 33 career games.
So can I ask you a question here on that real quick? Of course, David Montgomery has been around for all but 2 of them.
Correct.
How much does that change your opinion on that? Just how skewed is it because Montgomery has always been in there?
So 33 games in his career, Jahmyr Gibbs has gone over in 5 of them. He's been a starter in 5 of those 33, gone over in 3 of those 5.
So the Montgomery angle really does skew that.
just a little bit. But then also going to, even including David Montgomery in the offense this year, he went over several times to his attempt. Jahmyr Gibbs was getting the majority of carries in games that David Montgomery was participating in, and was also leading the backfield in yardage, even with David Montgomery also being in the backfield. But Jahmyr Gibbs did go over on all props last week, and is, again, in a prime position for a lightened workload before going to face the Vikings next week. But his 85.5 rushing yards has gone over in 5 of 15 games this season, 3.5 receptions over in 6 of 15, 3 straight overs, has enough targets in 8 of 15. His 113 total yards, rushing and receiving, has gone over in 5 of 15, back-to-back overs for Jahmyr Gibbs on that total yards. And then his anytime touchdown, 11-4, touchdowns in 3 straight, touchdowns in 5 of the last 6, touchdowns in 8 of the last 10, and 11 total touchdowns in the last 10 games for Jahmyr Gibbs. Essentially automatic. So if you want to put it on a parlay, I don't have a problem with it.
Nope.
Amon-Ra St. Brown, needing 7 catches to get that over, has gone over in 6 of 15 this season. Same thing with his yardage, over in 6 of 15 this season. Does have 4 games this season of those 6 with over 110 receiving yards. So if you do like the over on Amon-Ra St. Brown, that's 72.5. I have no problem with you taking a ladder as well, getting to over 100, over 110, over 120. He's got almost 200 yards in a game this season. So Amon-Ra St. Brown. There's also another fun note with the Detroit Lions offense this season. So other than weeks 1 and 2, Jamison Williams was the leading receiver in week 1. Amon-Ra St. Brown was the leading receiver in week 2. Every odd week of the season, Amon-Ra St. Brown has led the Lions in receiving.
Okay.
Every even week, it has either been Jamison Williams or Sam Laporta to lead the team in receiving.
Okay.
And with this being week 17, that would mean that Amon-Ra St. Brown should be leading the Lions
now,
in
is this,
receiving.
hold on a second, big clarification coming. This is week of game, not actual game, correct? Because this is game 16
yes,
for the Lions.
Their bye week was week 5.
Okay.
Which would have been an Amon-Ra St. Brown game.
Okay.
And week 4 and week 6 were both Jamison Williams.
Okay.
So
all right.
Odd number of weeks. Amon-Ra St. Brown, even number of weeks.
That is a very interesting one, young McCormick. Very interesting
also,
on that.
Other than weeks 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, there we go. So keep that. I'll keep that in your pocket next week. Take Jamison Williams to be the game's leading receiver next week.
Yeah. Well, just to jump on the other notes for those receivers. So Amon-Ra did have 7 catches, 87 yards in the 23 championship, and Laporta had 9 catches for 97 yards in the 23 championship. So his 4.5 receptions, he did go over in the 23 championship, but this season has only gone over in 3 of 14 games, has Sam Laporta. Over in 2 of the last 3, though, and enough targets in 7 of the last 8. So just he and Goff haven't been on the same page to actually get him over that 4.5, but he hasn't gotten enough looks to get there. His longest reception is at 17.5, 10-4 to the over, back-to-back overs after 3 straight unders. So Laporta should be slated to get at least an 18-yard catch tonight. And his anytime touchdown, he has scored 5 of 14 games this season. And then Jamison Williams, the one that you don't see on your screen now. Jamison Williams, his props are 3.5 receptions, over in 7 of 13, over in 5 of the last 6, enough targets in 10 of 13 this season. 51.5 receiving yards, 9-4 to the over in 5 of the last 7. His longest reception is at 23.5, over in 7 of 13. And he did also have 2 touchdowns in last year's NFC Championship game. So with the big play ability from the Lions offense in general, but Jamison Williams himself, I do like the over on Jamison Williams' longest reception and his anytime touchdown as well.
To the quarterbacks real quick. Yeah. Again, been a nightmare year for the Niners. Purdy has regressed. I still don't want to say I think he's been bad. He just did not play anywhere near the level he played out a year ago, and part of the reason that the Niners have stunk it up in comparison. Again, Jared Goff wise, I mean, what do we do here? Do we again? This is a very hard prop game because we don't know if this will be. Especially again, this is why I think I like the Lions first half as my favorite bet of the night. Is if Detroit whips them up in the first half, then you probably are looking at a bunch of unders in the second half, or some weird prop stuff in the second half, Ryan. So again, I'm the Lions first half and Bomber anytime touchdowns are the ways that I'm looking to play this game. And maybe you too take some unders here on the Detroit guys and hope that they run it up so badly in the first half that Campbell's like, all right, I'm up 27-3 at halftime. They get one drive in the second half, and that's it. Well,
I mean, hopefully our listeners are actually listening to you, because I do think that is the right way to go about things. We don't know how long these guys are going to stay in this game and how long their game script actually is. But at these quarterback numbers, Jared Goff has gone over that 31.5 attempts in 6 of 15 games this season, has gone over in 5 straight, though. 23 completions is what you'll need for the over. That's another one that he's only gone over in 6 of 15. Has gone over in 5 of the last 6. 245 passing yards is what you'll need for the over there. 9 and 6 to the over in 5 of the last 6 as well. He'll need 2 passing touchdowns, heavy juice, minus 185. 11 and 4 this season, other than the first 2 weeks of the season that he went under. He's really gone over in 11 of the past 13 weeks on that touchdown prop. His interceptions, he gotten the yes in 5 of 15, only 2 yeses in the last 12 weeks though. So Jared Goff has been, other than the 5 interceptions against the Texans, has only thrown interceptions in 2 games in the last 12 weeks. His anytime touchdown is at 8-1. Another maybe fun note, depending on whatever. Had at least 1 anytime touchdown in each year that he was spent in Los Angeles, totaling 10 touchdowns over 5 seasons. In Detroit, 0 touchdowns in year 1, 0 touchdowns in year 2, 2 touchdowns last year, and does not have a rushing touchdown this year, but does have the receiving touchdown that we saw earlier this year. So if you're going to average it out to 1 per year, he would need another one this season for the Lions. But I don't recommend taking a Jared Goff anytime touchdown. That, again, to the game script, we don't know if he'll be in the second half, and we also don't know if they'll even put him in jeopardy near the goal line, because they have other guys that are capable of punching it across the goal line when it is that close. And then looking at Brock Purdy, his Goff's longest completion first. He's gone over 9 of 15 this season, back-to-back overs after 3 straight unders. So Goff over that 34.5 could be good, especially with the big playability of Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams. Looking at Brock Purdy's, his 33 attempts is what you'll need for the over. Has only gone over in 4 of 14 games this season. 21 completions is what you'll need. 5 and 9 this season. His passing yards is at 254.5. 8 and 6 this season. 5 and 9 on that passing touchdown prop. 7 and 7 on his interceptions with back-to-back yeses. So Brock Purdy is not taking good control of the ball the last 2 weeks. And his anytime touchdown is 3 and 11 this season, with all 3 being in Niner home games. So could be an anytime touchdown for Brock Purdy tonight if they get close to the goal line. But his longest completion is at 37.5. I don't like the fact that it is higher than Jared Goff's. 7 and 7 this season, under in 4 of the last 5. I would be more inclined to take the under 37.5 for the longest completion for Brock Purdy.
All right, let's move to the college end of things here. Let's start with tomorrow night, Ryan, and let's start with the college football playoff game in Glendale, Arizona, the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State, Boise State. Winner will be the first into the semifinal, which the bottom of the bracket is going to Miami. The top of the bracket is going to Dallas. Again, I'm a little bit surprised they just didn't wait until everyone was who advanced, but right. I get it, whatever, on that. It could be Longhorns could end up with a nice little home field. See, for Oregon, it's just like you get the second best team in the country, a home game for Texas in the second game. Like, just the hardest path imaginable for the best team in college football. All right, but here you go, 11 in this one, Ryan, with Penn State laying it up from 10, 53 the total here. What are your initial thoughts here as we go through this game?
Well, so, I mean, obviously, Drew Aller and Maddox Madsen are going to be the two keys at quarterback for these two teams, and then Ashton Genty for the Broncos and Katron Allen for the Nittany Lions. But one thing that I think is going to be most important for Penn State is whether or not Drew Aller is going to be able to take care of the football in this one. He's thrown interceptions in 4 games this season. Week 2, they were down 24-20 to Bowling Green. Week 6, they were down 20-6 at halftime to USC and ended up escaping in overtime despite 3 interceptions from Aller. Week 8, he also had an interception, and he threw an interception in a goal-to-go scenario when they could have gone up at halftime against Ohio State, and then that put them behind, really 28-10. And then in the Big Ten Championship, basically threw a pick 6 to put them down 18 in the first 20 minutes of the game. So Drew Aller taking care of the football is going to be the most important thing on the Penn State side of the ball. But then whether or not Maddox Madsen is going to be able to do the same on his side of the ball, because Ashton Genty should be able to handle his workload and keep the Broncos in this one. I at least think so, being that he was the rightful Heisman Trophy winner. But Ashton Genty averages 26.5 carries per game, 192 yards per game, 7.3 yards per carry, and has 29 touchdowns this season versus Oregon in week 3. But Oregon was the team that Penn State played in the Big Ten Championship. Versus Oregon, 25 carries, 192 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So if Ashton Genty is able to put anywhere near similar a workload that he did against Oregon in this game against Penn State, and Maddox Madsen is able to control the ball and not turn it over or put Boise State in a position in long third down situations to where he can't complete passes downfield. I think that is going to be the recipe for Boise State in this game, is to keep Penn State off the field, have Ashton Genty be your workhorse, and you can't have Maddox Madsen be the guy to win this game for you. He has only been sacked 10 times in 13 games this season, but in that game against Oregon, he completed 17 of 40 passes for only 148 yards and 1 touchdown, and Boise State still managed to only lose by 3. I don't think you're going to get 200 passing yards from Maddox Madsen tonight, but again, if you're kind of thinking it's going to be a similar game script to what they did against Oregon, I would take the 11, and I think Boise does have a chance to win this game as long as they're able to control their own mistakes.
So if you go, again, can we actually show the bracket real quick there, Drew Doug, just to make sure everyone is aware of where everyone is going here as well, and then I'll give my thoughts. Again, so you see Penn State and Boise State. The winner of this game will take on the winner of the Sugar Bowl, which is Georgia Notre Dame. We'll get to that later. The other side of the bracket is Texas, Arizona State, and Oregon, Ohio State. So just so everyone who, again, if this is new, if you're not keeping up with it 100%, you can be very easily confused on what everything is. There's no reseeding, even though we got shocked by the seeds in round 1, and all the favorites, of course, covered with relative ease. Texas was the only one that was even remotely sweaty by the end. All right, so for Boise State, let's go there first. The most similar comp for a game is the Oregon game, week 2. The Ducks were not the Ducks at that point.
Right.
Remember, Oregon struggled like hell against Idaho week 1, an FCS team that got clocked in the quarterfinals of the FCS tournament. Then they played Boise in week 2, and remember, Oregon was a huge favorite in that game. Opened 3 touchdowns. They did bet Boise State. It got down to 18.5, 18. The game was never in doubt of who was going to cover the spread. Boise put up 20 in the first half on Oregon. Actually had a lead at halftime, and then Oregon ended up kicking a field goal with no time left to win by 3. Ashton Genty in that game was 25 for 192 and 3 touchdowns. That's about 8 yards per carry. You have to have something similar to that if you're going to stay in this game. If you're Boise State, you need to have a game where Genty's around 8 yards a carry, which, yes, sounds like a loony bin number, But that's the talent gap in this game. As good as Boise is, and as idiotic as Penn State has been in the past in big-time games, this is a whole different animal for Boise State. And yes, I know going to Odson and playing the team that ended up being the number one team in the country to a field goal game is really difficult. They did that because Genty was Superman in that game. Madsen threw 40 passes in that game, only threw for 148 yards.
Yeah.
The only thing that was good in that game for Madsen is he didn't turn the ball over.
Yep.
If Madsen starts turning the ball over in this game's over.
Yeah, they're done.
And Penn State's going to win and cover this game.
Yes.
Madsen has to play, most importantly, turnover-free football. He doesn't even have to be overly efficient. He just has to not turn the ball over. Obviously, if his game where he's like 15 of 49, yes, no good. But he was 17 of 40 in that Oregon game for 148, and they lost by 3 because Genty was superhero-ish. If Genty's not a superhero, I have a hard time seeing Boise State having any chance of winning this game. Could they cover 11? Yeah, I think their defense is good enough to stay in this game. I have concerns about how they can cover Tyler Warren, of course. Yeah. Aller, I think, is one of the more underratedly good quarterbacks in the country at this point. But if you made me take it, I would take the 11 with Boise. I'd also bet this game under. I think Boise is going to struggle to score in this game, and I think their defense is good enough to hold Penn State in the mid-20s, and this could be 24-10. Wouldn't shock me if it's something like that. Boy, where you get favored and under, and you're really not even sweating the under when it's all said and done.
Fully capable of a backdoor as well.
Yeah, 100%.
At that point, so.
All right, let's get the other double-digit spread before Vicenz gets in here. And this is, again, I think this is a horrible matchup for Arizona State, more so than anything. Cam Scatabo and company will take on Texas in the Peach Bowl, early game on Saturday. So, look, the bettors have bet Arizona State. This opened 14. I actually thought we were going to get back to 14. Not so fast. We're 12.5 on this game now, and it's basically 12.5 everywhere. There were some injuries on the Texas defense side, but still, Ryan, I just thought this is the worst matchup, period, that Arizona State could have drawn against anyone. Yeah, there were more flaws because of Quinn Ewers, the inconsistency of Quinn Ewers on the offensive side of the ball, as opposed to if they'd drawn Oregon for certain or even Notre Dame, in all honesty. But this Texas defensive front, for the way that Arizona State, without Jordan Tyson at the wide receiver position, is going to have to win this game with Sam Levitt and Scatabo going off.
Yep.
This is a bad recipe against that D-line, which is the best D-line in college football. Boy, now that we're shy of 13, I think I'd lay this with Texas. As much as I would love to see Arizona State stay in this game, I just think this is a death matchup for the Sun Devils in this game.
Yeah, going into the playoff, we had this exact same thoughts when we did our predictions, but I think the only chance for Arizona State in this game is if Quinn Ewers makes a good amount of mistakes in this game.
He could.
So the Texas had top 25 matchups. Obviously, these teams didn't finish in the top 25, but at the time of the game, Michigan was a top 25 matchup, Oklahoma, Georgia, Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Clemson last week. Quinn Ewers has 12 touchdown passes in those games, 8 interceptions, so 1.5 touchdowns per interception is not so good in games against good opponents. Arizona faced top 25 opponent, or Arizona State, faced top 25 opponents against Utah, Kansas State, BYU, and Iowa State, all Big 12 opponents. But they forced at least 1 interception in every single one of those games. 3 against Utah, 2 against Kansas State, 2 against BYU,
yep.
and then 1 last week against Iowa State. So Arizona State has shown the ability that their defense can step up in games that they need to, and that's going to be what they need to do in this game to stay in it against Texas. Sam Levitt has a 63.2% completion percentage this year. That's going to need to be better as well for Arizona State to stay in this game. They're outscoring their opponents in the last 2 weeks, 94-26. So they're feeling good on both sides of the ball. And Cam Scatabo has been rushing for over 130 yards per game and 6 yards per carry this season. So they're going to need that to stay true in this game. But how are you going to get that against a strong defensive front in Texas? I don't have a play on the side or spread in this game, but I tend to think there's going to be a good amount of points scored in this game, and the over 51 for me.
No problem with that. No problem with that. Again, Clemson had a real shot to cover that game. They had 2 plays from the 1 yard line to get it within 7 and really make things interesting down the stretch.
Yep.
Just couldn't get in the end zone. Texas got 1 first down, punted it back, then got another stop, and that was that on the Clemson game. Let's bring Vinny in for these last 2 here. And we start with the granddaddy of them all. That's the football game, Vinny. I'm not insulting you there.
I was going to say, Vinny walks in, all of a sudden we're at the convalescent home.
I'm not. That's the football game, the Rose Bowl.
Okay.
Oregon, Ohio State. So I can't wait for, and we know that Fowler will be on the game, so he knows he's in the know on this. There will be plenty of traditional media that if Ohio State wins this game, screaming upset, 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 where Ohio State's a 2.5-point favorite. It's not a betting upset, to say the very least. But this is, Brian, these are 2 best teams in the country to me, and they're playing in the quarterfinals. Of course, the first matchup between these teams was that epic in Hodson and Oregon won by 1, where Will Howard lost his bearings on the clock and time ran out in order for Oregon to win by a point, with Ohio State actually in field goal range after the final play ended.
Yep.
But look, I think the way the bettors have taken this open 1.5. I think the bettors were right to take this to 3. And I blinked, so I missed the 3, unfortunately.
There you go, blinking again.
Yeah, I can't do it. Can't do it. But I think this is right here at 2.5 with Ohio State. That feels right to me, where we're kind of in the camp of either like the Buckeyes, you lay the 2.5, or you like the Ducks and you take the plus 15 on the money line. I think that's where we're at this point.
Yeah, and it's kind of just the sentiment that I've been on the last several months. I just think the Oregon Ducks are the best team in the country, and so I've taken the 2.5 and the money line as well. I just think the Ducks are the better team in this one. I know when we did our predictions, I had said that I thought Ohio State would still win the Big Ten Conference in the conference championship, and Oregon would come into this matchup and win this one in the playoff. I think Oregon has the advantage in the playoff scenario with Dan Lanning over Ryan Day and Dylan Gabriel over Will Howard. So it's the Ducks for me in this one.
Vinny, just before I give my play as of the moment, Wednesday morning, Alex and I will be here previewing all 3 of these mega quarterfinal games. But Vinny, again, I'm not really surprised what the bettors have done here. Like, I get opening at 1.5 with Ohio State. I understand that, in line with what the market basically was at the time. And I get the bettors doing what they've done with this game. It makes a whole lot of sense.
Well, don't forget, what impacted that too was the fact that Ohio State played and they won in dominant fashion.
Yep.
And Oregon was off, and oftentimes, recency bias,
right,
what folks have seen recently, impacts their decision. And the fact is, too, it's football. They came out of the game pretty healthy. It's not like there was anything major that occurred from an injury standpoint. And you have a situation, too, where it's rhythm, right, with football, right? So week to week to week. Now, sometimes the longer layoff can work against the team, particularly in the first half. So I think that had a lot to do with it, and the folks laying the 1.5 and the 2, and that's why we're at 2.5. Got the 3, but didn't. We've been at 2.5 now for over a week. So, and don't forget, these games have been up for a couple of weeks.
Yep.
Jimmy's behind
Jimmy
you.
Carroll, come on in.
Did we send this one out yet?
No, come over there. You got to show that.
Oh, hold on a second. Is the mic working, Jerry?
Should be.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
Jimmy,
sure.
Enter. There you go, right in the front. There you go. There you go. Jimmy Vaccaro, ladies and gentlemen.
Jimmy Vaccaro is here.
I think
Here, into the microphone, Jimmy.
There you go.
Yeah.
don't holler. We got two
Hey, they fixed the mic so you could use it.
Joe Montana must be playing tonight.
Yeah, it's $40,000 on the 49ers at 2-1 on the money line.
2 on the money line tonight.
Yes.
And don't forget that game, by the way, Chris went to 4 on that game
Yeah.
a little while ago. So, yeah.
That's a big bet share there, Jimmy.
Well, for guys like you, it isn't. Yeah.
That's
Your wife called.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, she pretended she liked her Christmas gift.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
I'm leaving.
Appreciate it. Happy New Year. We already passed
Are
Christmas.
we going out?
No, we're still on.
You want to go anywhere?
Yeah, let's start downtown at the Cirque and end up over here.
All right, sounds good. I'm in. Okay, Jimmy, you can take
Going
care of
down
the
Las Vegas
transportation. We'll be in good shape. Jimmy Vaccaro, everyone. All right. I actually want to
there
ask
was another bet with that too. 20,000 plus the 4.
So I want to ask you actually
Yeah.
real quick about that game before we hit Notre
Yeah.
Dame and Georgia before we get out of here. Ryan and I were discussing this earlier, where this game is meaningless technically for Detroit. Doesn't matter.
Technically, that's true.
But we are dealing with Dan Campbell.
Who, by the way, you saw his press. Was it yesterday? His presser
I think it was Saturday.
when he was talking about how they're approaching this game like any other game, and it's
So
business as usual.
So I want to ask you this real quick.
Didn't say how long it would be business as usual.
No, but Ryan and I are kind of we're talking about before. We think Detroit first half's the best bet in this game because at a bare minimum, we expect Campbell to play his guys that like a regular normal game for at least 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. It's more than possible Detroit's up 27-3 on the Niners at halftime in this game with the way that the Niners have been this year. And then the foot is taken off the gas pedal because it's like, all right, I'm up 24 in a game that doesn't mean anything. We got to sit everyone down for Minnesota on a short week.
Yeah, I think that certainly makes sense, and
numbers also dictating that too.
Well, that's for certain, but the first half number, you're going to kind of correlate it too with the game. But here's the thing: the reason they don't need the game is because they've got the tiebreaker in their pocket right now with the Vikings. So next week's game, let's say that the Lions lose tonight, and you look at the standings, and the Vikings are a game ahead of the Lions in the division. If the Lions beat them next week at home as a field goal favorite, and they finish tied, well, the Lions win the division, and they had the number 1 seed because of the tiebreaker. So to your point, Jeff, absolutely. I think there's a lot of pride, too, on the Niners side. They're not going to the playoffs this year after being in the Super Bowl a year ago. So what you have here is a classic pros versus the casual fans, pros versus Joes, if you will. And the public is all over the Lions, as they've been for the last 2 years, okay? But pros realize that, listen, this is... it's about the number, right? Not only did they take 3.5 when we went, for a bit, but now they went to 4 because we had to, because of carryover as well. And last night's game impacted that. The result last night impacted it with the Commanders. So that's why you're seeing this number here. And as we speak, we're back down to 3.5.
There we go. As we
to be expected.
Perfect.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
But I really,
pro money took the 4.
So I will say this though, Vinny. Just back to that first half here, and we see this type of number.
Yeah.
Actually, the more time that we see this, actually, for a first half versus full game. We usually see this a lot when an NBA team is down 2-0, returning home for Game 3 of a playoff series, where you see the line within a half point, one way or another, of the full game with the first half. Sometimes you even see the first half bigger than the full game. Sometimes in those NBA playoff games, but that's tonight the thing too. Like I don't mind laying 3 in a first half that's a game of 3.5, and I get why the Sharps are taking the 4 because. It could be, again, I think our scenario is going to end up playing out here, Ryan, where the Lions...
Tale of two halves.
The Lions dominate the first half. Campbell takes the foot off the gas pedal in the second half. And if you bet Lions full game, you're sweating your behind off the final 15 minutes of the game.
Well, the other thing is, right, it's kind of bitten Campbell in the butt this year sometime, right, with some of these big leads... right, in the fourth quarter, and he's had starters in. I have to believe he's got to adjust to that, given their injury situation being what it is. So, Jeff, I mean, again, and to Ryan's point also, if you like the Niners plus the points, you definitely sprinkle in some money line on this game too. They're not gonna lay down in this game by any.
Well, we did have a question in the live chat.
Go for it.
This morning's Sports by the Book was asking when was the last time the Niners were an underdog at home, and 2 years ago, they were an underdog to the Kansas City Chiefs by 1 point at home. They ended up losing that game. And then in 2021, they were a 4-point underdog to the Rams at home, and they ended up winning that game at 31-10. So in the last 3 seasons, they've been an underdog at home twice and only once at this level. So
that Chief game you're referring to is one of the more vicious beatdowns you will ever see, where Kansas City scored on the first 7 drives of the game.
It was a pretty dominant.
Yeah, it was a pretty vicious beatdown.
Yeah.
That was also at the same time that the Jets and the Broncos played a game that featured 1 touchdown. It was a great time for everyone involved. All right, Vinny, let's go to the final college football quarter. Notre Dame and Georgia.
Yeah.
We talked at length with Chris Felica on Friday about this game, and it's down to 1. With Georgia favored in this
Actually,
game.
we're still at 1.5.
You're still at 1.5. A lot of the market is at 1.
Yeah, I saw
Apologies
that.
there.
Yeah.
You know, I've liked Notre Dame the whole time here, but I keep thinking of what Bear said, and he probably is right here, and that has me concerned with all my Notre Dame futures that I have of very similar, now that it's Gunnar Stockton, instead of Carson Beck. By the way, Carson Beck declared for the NFL draft.
Yes.
Instead of going into the transfer portal, which kind of caught me off guard more so than anything. Different discussion for a different
I
time.
think both were about the same for his
Yeah.
career trajectory.
Yeah, pretty much.
Both options.
Pretty much.
But anyway.
So the Gunnar Stockton deal of this, and there's no reason to even look at stats on Stockton. It's 1/2 of football here. But we saw enough in that Texas second half that he is a guy that can utilize his legs. Riley Leonard's best strength is the ability to utilize his legs. That usually would probably go to a Georgia advantage because even with how good Notre Dame's defense has been, Georgia defense is unbelievable and probably still a little more talented than Notre Dame. With that said, I think the under is the play in this game now that I think about it more. I don't think either team's getting to the 20s in this game. We kind of saw it in the SEC title game, even with the overtimes.
Yeah.
It still was a dead under, Ryan.
Yeah. No, I tend to agree with you on the under, especially because Georgia has played 9 overtimes in their last 2 games of football.
Is that a lot?
Granted, it's not time overtimes in college rules, but still 9 overtimes in their last 2 games against Georgia Tech and Texas. So that's a lot of extra football, or a lot of extra snaps for the Georgia team to have to go through. Granted, they did get the bye, but having to go against the Notre Dame team and Riley Leonard, Jeremiah Love and Riley Leonard are the 2 keys for the Notre Dame ground game in this one. Riley Leonard has over 10 carries per game, and Jeremiah Love, we kind of got to see his track speed against Indiana with that 98-yard rush. But for the 2 of them to be able to control the clock and control the pace of the game is going to be how Notre Dame wins this game, by keeping Georgia off the field and allowing their defense to get the rest that they need to keep Georgia's offense stagnant. So I think Notre Dame's offense is what is needed. The rushing offense is what's needed for this one.
I think, too, if you're talking about the under, right, and both you guys seem to, the running game and things like that, of course, turnovers are going to come into play. And who wins the turnover battle, obviously, should be in a better position to win this game. This total has gone up, and I think it'll continue to go up. The public loves points, particularly in high-profile games like this. So we did open at 44. It's up to they went over 44. They went over 44.5. It sits at 45. I have to believe it'll go up before it comes back down. And I think that anybody looking to bet the under is pretty much waiting for probably game day or maybe even tomorrow night. So bear that in mind. But if you like the under, not telling you not to bet under 45, but
I missed it. I know
more of a likelihood to get to get higher than for it to come back down anytime soon.
And look, I'll probably wait this out to bet this under.
That's fun.
Especially again, if we see 3 overs in the first 3 games, we all know what the public's going to do.
Oh, sure.
I mean, they're just going to blindly bet this thing over. This, to me, even as good as Ohio State, Oregon should be, this is the most intriguing game on the board for me, just because of the Gunnar Stockton portion of the program here for this game.
I can see it.
It's a complete unknown.
Yeah.
So, I could get smoked completely with my Notre Dame positions. Gunnar Stockton could end up being better than Carson Beck. With the way Beck played this year, it's not impossible. He could also be completely in over his head when a team's had 3 weeks to prepare for him. So it's a complete unknown here with this, and that makes it a very interesting and fascinating handicap and a fascinating football game that we get to end these quarterfinal matchups.
Well, I think along those lines too, he is a better runner than passer.
Yeah.
But also because the receivers for Georgia, we've talked about it all year.
Down
The receivers for Georgia, the best receivers. One is playing a few miles away from here for the Raiders, and of course the other is playing for the Chargers, and they did not reload to that capacity. So more of a likelihood that will be a focus. Now, he did demonstrate he could throw, and he had to, and things along those lines. But to your points, again, more. That's why this total, when you look at it, it is the lowest total. It's a big factor. Those are big factors, I should say, that have made this lower than the other three games, which are in the 50s.
Before we go here today, guys, just want to throw this out there. We mentioned at the beginning of the show, if you're watching on the bottom on our screen, at the bottom of our screen, that's every guest that we've had this year on any of the programs here at the studio. We appreciate all of them, but we'd be remiss to not mention everyone who's been in the chat all year long, whether it's on this show, Punchlines, the other version of Sports by the Book, Gone Racing on with Ralph Sirocco as well in Race Day Las Vegas. We would not be here without you guys. We would not be here. And we appreciate every single one of you for watching, listening, commenting, going after me for not liking the Denver Broncos, supposedly. But we appreciate all of you. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. We wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have existed in the first place if it wasn't for everyone out there. And our audience has grown this year. We appreciate you out there for growing our audience, being a part of this growth that we hope to continue for a very long time right here at the South Point studio and Sports by the Book, whether it's Football Frenzy. Hey, we'll have Free Throw Friday coming back at some point.
Bend your knees.
Yeah. Take a deep breath before you take that free throw there, Vinny. You calm the nerves. But we really appreciate it. And Ryan, good work. Again, first season on the desk. Plenty more coming through for him. Drew, Jerry here today. Of course, Ann, who's not here right now. Sean, who's off on Mondays, who, of course, said to everyone on Friday, see you next year. And, of course, I saw him yesterday, so that didn't even work out. For Caden, who's up in Utah, for everyone who's been involved, we appreciate all of you through the year. This show, Football Frenzy, we won't see you guys on this show until a week from today.
Until next year?
Yes, until a week from today. We don't have a Football Frenzy on Thursday because Football Frenzy will actually be going in the morning on Wednesday, leading you in to the 3 college football playoff games. And that will be myself and Alex White getting you ready for those games on Wednesday at 9 a.m. right here on the channel. And, of course, Kenny and Alex are here tomorrow for the final day of the year. Pretty darn good bowl slate tomorrow leading in to the quarterfinal at night with Penn State and Boise State. Vinny, thank you. Thank you as
Good
always,
job, guys.
Vinny.
Crew.
Ryan, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jeff Parles. We'll see you again next time right here, Football Frenzy, Sports by the Book.